JVS, we're here to talk about the Golden Globe nominations for films that were announced this morning. I'm here with Matt Noble and Zach Laws, and we're here to talk about what we were most surprised about and other notable facts from this morning's announcement. Zach, I'm going to you first. What was the most surprising thing you saw from the announcement this morning?
Well, I mean, I think the most surprising thing for me was what was the most surprising for everybody, probably, as far as inclusions go, which was the strong showing for All the Money in the World, a movie that has had a really beleaguered production, as we know. It did get seen by Globe voters in time. I can't talk about the merits of the movie or of the nominations because I and nobody else that we know has seen it yet. I did just get a screening invite to it literally 2 hours after the Golden Globe nominations, and Ridley Scott and a few people are going to be there, as will, I guess, every journalist out here. You know, I think a lot of people were wondering, I certainly was, if Christopher Plummer could show up, but I didn't know if maybe it had just sort of screened too late for them, if they had already kind of rounded out their five. That wasn't as big a surprise as the nominations for Michelle Williams and Ridley Scott. I think that we should probably, once we've all seen this movie, take it seriously as an Oscar contender now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was completely surprised. I didn't have it down for anything, actually, to be honest. Matt, what about you? What was most surprising?
It was the big snub for The Big Sick. No picture nomination, no actor nomination for Kamal. No screenplay nomination. Am I right about that? No screen. Yeah, no, not in for screenplay, not in for director. Just completely shut out for a film that was one of the big sort of financial but also critical successes of the year in the comedy races, where you often see more like the Globes is the awards where you can shine a spotlight on a film like The Big Sick, where it could get overshadowed in other races, in other awards where they don't have a separate comedy category. So I thought that was hugely disappointing, and I don't quite know why they passed that over for other films.
Yeah, it was surprising. I would have thought that would have been a shoo-in. I guess maybe you could probably say that the comedy musical categories this year are pretty strong, relatively speaking to other years. I know there's some controversy about Get Out being submitted or being classified as a comedy. That's a whole other discussion, because I found some of it slightly amusing, but I probably wouldn't have called it a comedy. That's a whole other thing. For me, I was surprised to see that Get Out weren't featured in the director category. And I know, again, that's a very competitive category. And we've got, you know, like Guillermo del Toro and Martin McDonagh and Christopher Nolan, Ridley Scott, Steven Spielberg. Nothing to sneeze at, but I would have expected to see Greta Gerwig. I'm really gunning for her nomination at the Oscars. I want to see another woman in that category. It doesn't happen often enough. And I really thought that Jordan Peele was going to be there as well. And I expect that he should be there at the Oscars. So I was really disappointed about that. That was my major surprise, really, because apart from that, I found a lot of these nominations to be pretty standard. Apart from what you guys have just mentioned, nothing really stuck out to me as being an egregious error or an embarrassment. You know, sometimes the HFPA likes to embarrass themselves. Nothing really embarrassing here. So I'm going to go back to you now, Zach. What else did you find particularly notable about this morning's nominations?
Well, I mean, you mentioned Peele and Gerwig, and I've always thought that they were going to have a tough time getting in at the Oscars for directing, but I mean, that's for a separate discussion, I think. The fact is you could fill another 5 out with, you know, the two of them, Dee Reese, speaking of women. Mudbound is a magnificently directed movie. It did get in for Mary J. Blige and for Song, so that's great, but she was overlooked. Denis Villeneuve for Blade Runner, a movie that got completely skunked. And Luca Guadagnino for Call Me By Your Name. That movie I expected to do a lot stronger. It only got 3 nominations, no director, no writer for James Ivory, no song for Sufjan Stevens. The also notable exclusion for me from the picture category was Darkest Hour. I mean, this is a movie that looks like it was tailor-made for Golden Globe voters. It's from Joe Wright, whose Atonement won Best Picture 10 years ago. It's got the British element to it. It's very important. It's also got the Best Actor frontrunner, Gary Oldman, in it. I'm starting to think that this movie might just be a Best Actor play for Oldman and a below-the-line player. It might not get into Best Picture at the Oscars.
Good point. Matt, what about you? Anything else notable that you found from this morning's announcement?
Touching on some of the snubs I've already talked about, was wasn't too surprised to see Peele miss out on the director nomination for Get Out, but to not see him get in for screenplay, I thought was particularly weird. And with The Big Sick too, Holly Hunter didn't get nominated for supporting actress, who is one of the people we're predicting for Oscar nominations as well. So just like, I think a couple of films that were really just on the outs, and I think as Zach said, Blade Runner as well was one that we probably expected to pop up a little more than actually did. And I think the Globes, when they're filling up, you know, they want Nolan, they want Ridley Scott, they want Steven Spielberg all nominated for Best Director. There just aren't many slots left after those three big names. And there's going to be some big snubs. I wonder if the Oscars directors branch will throw us some more curveballs, as we've seen in past years.
Yeah,
I think that just going back to Ridley Scott, I mean, you really should take this seriously at the Oscars, because, I mean, this is somebody, he's 80 years old. He's a living legend. He had 2 movies out this year. A lot of people, myself included, thought he could win for The Martian 2 years ago, and he got snubbed by that, but he probably came very close to getting nominated. And I mean, he basically just, like, he did something that's unprecedented in movie history, you know, yanked his movie out of circulation before it was supposed to come out, reshot some of it, replaced Kevin Spacey with Christopher Plummer, and is going to deliver it on time, you know, like, you know, reshoots this stuff 3 weeks before it's scheduled to open. So they just might really appreciate that, directors and the Academy.
Yeah, you know, obviously a lot of us need to see this film, and it's early days, and this could be a big red herring. The Golden Globes love to throw red herrings at us, where we think something's really getting all this heat and then it dies. But we really have to take this film seriously, and that's one of the big takeaways. For me, the other big takeaway from my first reaction from looking at the nominations was that The Shape of Water did much better than even I expected. Now, I know it's a big player, and it will be a big player, but it really dominated where it counts. And so we must be taking that film seriously as well. Charlie has just joined us. Hi, Charles. Charles was running a bit late, but we're going to go. I'm not sure if he's still frozen, but we'll just wait until he settles in, and then we'll get him to give us his reaction.
On this, the money one and Ridley Scott, I think that's largely the Globes wanting to make a splash. Like, this is a film that no one's responded to, no one's gotten out, and sort of they can really plant their flag at this film. And they didn't give it a Best Picture nomination. Like, so if it was able to get in one of the 5 director slots, why wasn't it able to get into one of the picture slots when they didn't even need to go against the comedies? Until this film comes out, unless there is a great response, I think this director field is too crowded for Ridley Scott to get into at the Oscars. I just do. Again, unless there's a huge response, unless there's like, this is one of the best films of the year, I think, if anything, the Globes have raised expectations for this film rather than...
Yep. I didn't mean to cut you off. So I was just going to say, again, they're the only ones who've seen it. So, I mean,
yeah, a rough cut.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe they know something we don't know, or maybe it's just, like you said, Matt. I mean, the thing about the Globes that we should always remember is that they like to lift films up that have not been lifted up before by, like, Critics' Choice or by other critics groups. And so that was this film for them. Basically, everything else has been seen and has been touted heretofore. So this was their opportunity to make a statement. Now, again, they may know something we don't know. It might be an absolute masterpiece. We'll just have to see.
The thing is, though, I was thinking that, is this a big slap in the face to people like Kevin Spacey?
Yes.
a lot of this is about, I can see the scandal, the Hollywood sexual assault and sexual harassment scandal kind of peppered throughout this nominations announcement, especially on the TV side. And could this have been a factor that Ridley Scott went against the grain and did something almost insurmountable, and it looks like he's pulled it off, and Christopher Plummer gets recognition, and it's a slap in the face to people like Kevin Spacey. That's where I was reading this at the moment until we've seen it.
Yeah, we have one of the strongest female directors in one of the strongest female directors the last couple of years, Greta Gerwig, and they snub her.
Yeah.
And Dee Reese. Don't forget about Dee Reese. Everyone talks about Greta Gerwig, but Dee Reese is very deserving.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's a Netflix film. About Dee Reese, I love seeing Mary J. Blige in that category, because obviously she's not renowned for being an actor, and yet her performance was something that just could not be ignored in Mudbound, and really, really good to see her there. Charlie, I think you're with us now, I hope. Do you want to give us
I am completely with you.
What was your big takeout?
Well, let me tell you what I really think here. Hold on. Damn it, these things don't light anymore. Anyhow, that's what I get for using North Carolina tobacco. Anyhow, I think probably one of the biggest takeaways, you're talking about director right now, and I think it's really interesting. You know, we had this great year of diversity of people who, it's not just that there were diversity in the people doing work, because there always is, but I mean, truly worthy of recognition and seeming like they could get in for the recognition. And then the director category, you look at it, and there's no women, and there's only one non-white person there, Guillermo del Toro. And that just is kind of jarring. Usually you would think the Globes are the people that would actively seek to try to celebrate this. I mean, these were the guys who nominated Ava DuVernay for Selma, a couple of years back. So it really, really was jarring. I think probably some of my other takeaways immediately, at least on the film side, Dunkirk finally is getting some of the recognition that it needs in order to stay in the conversation.
Yeah,
which is great. Interestingly, the only critics group that has awarded Christopher Nolan is my own. I'm not a member, but my local group, the Washington D.C. Film Critics. We awarded him Best Director.
Smart choice.
I know, very much so. Their best picture was Get Out, so go figure on that one. But The Big Sick is nowhere to be seen. This is a film that you would think, especially with this cross-cultural romance, romantic comedy, would be right up their alley, and they completely ignored it in every category.
Yeah,
I was kind of surprised, but because it's the Hollywood Foreign Press, at the same time, I'm surprised, but I'm also not surprised, which just throws all my emotions into disarray.
Well, and then they also
yeah. Oh, go on.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, and then to ignore The Big Sick and put in The Greatest Showman, which is a movie. Just to give you a little bit of context, the embargo for that movie does not lift until the day of its release. So, I mean, I don't know how it is, but that kind of tells you what you need to know. I think they totally went in for the fact that it's a big Hollywood musical and Hugh Jackman is a big movie star, at the expense of this wonderful little movie that everyone I've talked to really seems to love.
Of course.
Yeah, and I think this is actually going to be one of the takeaways I'm taking away from this. Is I actually think that this no recognition by the Globes is going to hurt it for its potential Oscar prospects. Maybe not, because original screenplay is so crowded this year. That movie would have needed every bit of help it could have gotten.
Matt, did you have anything else to say? Because I was going to move on to another topic, but did you have anything to add to that?
No, not to that.
So I want to talk about, before we finish up, our favorite nomination. If you could pinpoint one thing in particular that just really made you happy. I'm going to start. When I was watching Downsizing, I thought Hong Chau was so wonderful, and I thought, imagine a world where she could be nominated for this performance, because it's risky and funny and sweet and heartfelt and beautiful. And to see her in this category alongside people like Laurie Metcalf and Alison Janney, Mary J. Blige, Octavia Spencer, I'm so thrilled. First of all, because we don't see enough a representation from Asian actors, and performers. And secondly, because she's so fantastic in Downsizing. So I was super, super, super excited to see her there. Who would like to go next?
Oh no, Matt, you go.
Charlie. Oh, thank you, Charles. So yeah, no, I think that's really good, Rob, what you said, and that she's got a great chance of, like, if other contenders fall during the Derby, she's now on the radar. I'm not sure if this will lead to an Oscar nomination, but at least keeps her in the conversation and makes her an option. My favorite was actually Ansel Elgort for Baby Driver. I was really excited. That was a great movie. Snubbed in the best comedy film race along with The Big Sick, and I just was glad that they went to this really strong lead performance there that I thought was funny and heartfelt and subtle, and I'm really glad that that film got some attention and notice here.
Zach?
Charlie, you go ahead. I mean, mine's pretty boring.
Hang on, he's just going to take a drag.
Yeah.
So, I have to say, reading the nomination list, seeing the name Jonny Greenwood in original score. Now, I have not seen Phantom Thread, but Rob, you can attest to this with me. We are both huge Radiohead fans.
Yeah.
And
so cool.
To see Jonny Greenwood, especially after he's been so continuously overlooked, being deemed ineligible so many years, to see him nominated here is just makes me very happy. And I just wonder if he wins, which is a strong possibility. I want to take bets on how short his acceptance speech is going to be.
It's a great movie, by the way.
Looking forward to it. And Zach, your final thought before we finish up.
I mean, there wasn't really anything on this list that surprised me too much. It's just more that I'm glad that, we've talked a lot about the people who were not included in the director category, and certainly there were people who are deserving. But I'm really glad, and I hope that the Academy also does not overlook the incredible achievements of both Christopher Nolan and Guillermo del Toro. I mean, for me, Dunkirk and The Shape of Water, Dunkirk, especially in terms of its scope and its importance and its ambition, it just towers above everything else that's in the Oscar race this year. And I really hope that, as much as we talk about all these other, these great filmmaking achievements, I really hope those two are not overlooked, and that maybe Nolan can get some recognition for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys. We'll reconvene for TV shortly, and thanks everyone for staying. Make sure you stay tuned for Gold Derby for all your Globes coverage.